delighted to have you with us to participate and share in the first webinar pre-event of Share Bucharest 2020. Our hosts today will be architect Alexandru Gavozda, the president of the Romanian Order of Architects, architect Șerban Țigănaș, the general secretary of the International Union of Architects, and also the president of the Share Society, and Florin Mindirigiu, the founder of Share Architects.
Great. Welcome, everybody. I think we are online and we can start. It's the first time we use this format. And I want to say again that what we are doing now, the webinar, is not actually replacing the Share conference that we hope to have in July as scheduled. If we are lucky, of course, and everything goes well. So we do these conferences for 10 years already, measuring the interest of our public, which is growing and changing, and inviting special guests to speak, and always partners. And these partners coming from the construction industry are actually our current support. Well, we will have this first experience, this format. As I said, we want to continue the next weeks in different places. I mean, in virtual places, but with different partners and different countries. We are actually covering by our conferences more than 10 countries in the area of Central Eastern Europe and the Balkans. And I'm very happy to have great speakers today, guests and special guests, and also partners for more than 1.5 hours from now. So because this is just an introduction, I will pass the microphone, the virtual microphone, to my colleague and co-moderator, Alexandru Gavozda, the president of the Romanian Order of Architects, and I hope we can manage together to do this moderation. Alex, it's your turn.
Thank you, Șerban. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We see already quite solid attendance for this event. It is indeed a premiere, and I think it's a good thing that Share has moved in the digital universe. We will share things, informations, know-how, and experiences, and we will probably provoke also everybody to develop new ideas for the coming future. This disruptive situation that we are in is going to probably develop also into a well of opportunities, not only in the sense of pressure and restrictions that we have come to know in the past few weeks. I'm very glad to welcome our guests, and I would like to not keep you waiting any longer. So I will pass the virtual microphone to Florin Mindirigiu for a couple of words of welcome, and then let's start the event. Your microphone, Florin.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much, all of you. Dear friends of Share, I see that we are now more than 150 participants here. And I want to say welcome to our first webinar. Share is a pre-event of Share Bucharest event Informat Physic. It's a unique event for us, especially nowadays during this ascent and tense period, but also is our first time in 20 years when we are not meeting in person, but rather in the online medium. We are here from various countries, and I hope today's event will be a pleasant experience, full of interesting and insightful architecture ideas. I wish you good luck and to be a very good start for sharing online medium. Thank you.
Thank you, Florin. I will now jump right into it and introduce our first guest speaker. This is architect Piotr LEWICKI. Piotr LEWICKI is a founder of Lewicki and Łatak project office from Poland. He has taught from 1992 to 1999 in the university's Institute of Urban Design, and from 2003 to 2009 in the Faculty of Architecture and Fine Arts of the Kraków Frycz Modrzewski Academy. Since 1988, he has worked with the architect Kazimierz Łatak, and in 1995, they founded their own studio, Biuro Projektów Lewicki Łatak, which, renowned in the area, has won several prizes in architecture competitions for projects including the Ghetto Heroes Square, the Plac Nowy, the Nowy Square in Krakow, the Krakow Centenary Stadium, and in Kazimierz, some other projects, a pedestrian and bicycle bridge over the Vistula River in Ludwinów. The heroes of the Ghetto Square received also a honorary mention in the European Prize for Public Space in Barcelona 2006, and also a gold award in the Urban Quality Award in Frankfurt am Main in 2011. The Biuro Projektów Lewicki Łatak has also received the SARP Prize for Architectural Design in 2004, and the annual award from the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage in 2018. So quite an entitled office, and the representative, Piotr LEWICKI, is here today with us. Piotr, you have the microphone and the virtual floor.
Okay. We are in a very specific situation, I would say, and it's still too early to say the future scenarios. So I'd like to comment on one possible scenario, and one of the possible scenarios is self-isolation mode, and I plan to use a small design, a small project we did recently, a couple of months ago, which gives an image and a comment to this self-isolation mode. And as I said, this is one of the scenarios. I'm pretty sure that we cannot foresee other scenarios or all scenarios, and no one of us is so far able to foresee the future. So let me give you just this example, which is somehow ironic comment, but I think it gives a really an image of what I call the self-isolation mode. This is a painting from the 19th century, which is a painting of a battle, medieval battle, which was one of the most important battles of the Polish history. But I'm showing it to you because this is one of the images. We see a very famous in Polish history medieval knight, which is Zawisza Czarny, Zawisza the Black. Zawisza Czarny, the medieval knight, was a very important person for our Polish history, and he died in a battle of between Turks and Christians as a mercenary in 15th century, something in the middle of 15th century. He left ruins of his castle, a small castle, a medieval castle in Rożnów, south of Krakow, and our client a few years ago, sorry, decided to buy these ruins from the heirs of Zawisza Czarne today. And he asked us to develop a concept to reconstruct this castle. Of course, it sounds ridiculous to reconstruct a medieval castle for today's needs. But anyway, I'm using this because this castle, of course, as it was in the past, gives a shelter and a place of self-isolation, which I see as an ironic comment to this post-pandemic situation. So we're trying, without having any images of the castle, we were trying to develop the way it will look. We're trying to imagine this imaginary castle, and we started with the sketches, of course, how to redevelop these ruins into a private house, giving the place for life and for entertainment, I would say. Well, as you saw on the first image, there are only some walls remain. We try to develop our sketches basing on these walls. We add some new enclosures to create a private, isolated environment, which is completely on the other side of the wall, having the view to the lake and having his own private world here. And this is a situation and the layout of this building. We have these ruins located between the river and the lake. We have the private path to the lake, the private, I don't know the word, the place when he can use a boat, and then his private life within the castle itself, with his private yard, private building, including all facilities he can use, also including some strange things like a private outdoor altar and a chapel, then some other functions inside, mainly residential and some other facilities. All plus a private garden on the roof, and so on. Then, as you can imagine, it creates a kind of a modern comment to a medieval castle, as I said. And I believe this is one of these really possible scenarios. I mean, one who can afford it, of course, creates his own world to self-isolate from the external conditions, as we are right now obliged to hide ourselves in our closed homes and houses. So this is an external view, the entrance into this private world through the gate, which is mainly along the street in this Rożnów community. Then when you enter this private road, there is a gate observed by the guard, who is having his boot here. Then you enter the yard, which gives you your private world, completely isolated from the external world, having the view towards the lake and all the functions you need for your life, including some large rooms, some private rooms, and other facilities. I've been using this example, of course, in a somehow ironic way, because when we started to work on this design a year ago, nobody could imagine that one day we'll think how to isolate ourselves from the potential dangers. But right now I realize that this is a kind of example of maybe the future architecture in these terms of a way how to escape the dangers, how to escape the virus. And sorry, and what is? I cannot change the slide. Oh, I'm afraid okay, thank you. This is the last image and the night view. As I can imagine, somebody is enjoying his private life in this isolated building, away from the dangers, enjoying his private life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. I think I take over from now, and I'm passing to the next speaker.
You lost your microphone.
I was enabling my microphone, but I don't know why it didn't work. So the Lebanese architect Bernard Khoury, born in 1968, is the son of Khalil Khoury, an exponent of the modernist movement in architecture, well known. Bernard Khoury spent his adolescence in Beirut during the Civil War, 1975-1990, and was completing his studies in the USA, graduating from Rhode Island School of Design in 1991, and 2 years later he obtained his master's degree from Harvard. Returning to Beirut, he began his professional career and founded DWS Architectural Practice in 1993. During the post-Civil War period, the city and its urban landscape became Khoury's workshop and source of inspiration. He was awarded by the municipality of Rome the honorable mention of the Borromini Prize, given to architects under 40 years of age. He was the architect and curator of the Kingdom of Bahrain's National Pavilion at Venice Biennale in 2014, and he was co-founder of the Arab Center for Architecture. I look forward for the presentation, which has a very attractive title. Bernard, please take the floor. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll try to be quick because I have a lot of slides, but let me start this talk by saying that with the crisis can come great things. With the convalescence beyond the crisis can come amazing things, because I think the crisis somehow has the capacity to wake us up, to revive some of our instincts that we might tend to lose when we are in too much of a comfortable situation. I'm quite familiar with crisis. I didn't choose it to be that way because I was born and raised in an area or in a part of the world that has gone through many crises and still is at this point. Beyond this pandemic, before this pandemic, is in fact a territory of very serious and very deep crisis. I was very touched by Stephen Hall's presentation, as you know, I sometimes envy these architects who have the luxury to work on these noble programs, such as museums, library, opera houses, and so on and so forth. I never did. And I probably never will work on public projects or any of these noble programs, because where I come from, the state is completely absent. So I find myself working with what some people call pirates. So I started my career in the entertainment industry, designing nightclubs, which are not necessarily the most noble things to do, but this particular nightclub, which was the first thing I ever built, was located on the site of a former refugee camp that was burned down to the ground in January 1976. So you can imagine what it could be like to design and build a place of debauchery on a site with such a problematic past. This is how I started my career. But prior to that, in the academic cocoon, I had worked also on a number of experimental projects that had to do with the scars of war. This project is called Evolving Scars, and it deals with the impossible recuperation of the ruins of the former city center after the 15 years conflict, which had turned the whole area into no man's land. So this was an exercise that attempted at making architecture out of the disappearance of matter, out of the demolition of buildings. And it's interesting to note that this is a project I worked on when I was only 22 or 23 years old, and it's still very dear to me, and that haunts me to this date, as many of these questions came back in practical projects such as La Centrale, which is the second project executed also for the entertainment industry, where we were recuperating a ruin that we gutted out in a very violent manner. Here, history is not done through the mummification of the ruin, but instead through recognizing the act or the violent act that we were performing. Another problematic site, my third project here, also for the entertainment sector, was an underground sushi bar located on the former demarcation line dividing Beirut between east and west. Mainly, the bar is located below the ground, and interesting to note that when we built it, back then when we designed it, it was a completely absurd proposition, as everything around us was still in ruins. It's interesting to note that 11 years later, as this was also a temporary project, our project got abandoned as the leasing expired, and it is now occupied by Syrian refugees who are using what used to be the elevator that took you from ground down to the basement, has become their living room. So it's interesting to see how basically history turns around you or against you when you act with such certitude at a certain moment in time, and then the city evolves in a completely different direction. This is what is left of the Yabani project, which is now has become a ruin, and the building next door has been rehabilitated. We've also worked with developers in other problematic zones, trying to make sense out of the residential sector or the real estate developers' take on it. This is, I would say, probably my residential project that is closest to or echoes most my past in the entertainment sector. This is a building where you can drive your car into your living room. They're small, very small apartments designed for bachelors, people who go to my clubs, basically. No families, no kids. This is not social housing. This is not your well-behaved program. It probably won't happen in Europe or in any stable and secure environment. This is another scheme which is a take on the toxic and violent environment in which we have designed this project, now located in a completely empty area surrounded by agricultural land, which pretty soon will be developed in the absence of any master plan. Over 400 linear meter of perimeter, out of which only 6.5 meters intersect with private plots, which you can imagine the catastrophe that can come in the near future once everybody around me will build blind walls. So this building is basically a suicidal scheme, which completely opens up at 100% of its periphery to its neighbors, opening its arms in a kind of a suicidal, masochistic way, awaiting for its neighbors to violate it or hopefully be kind to it. This is a form of architecture in crisis in the sense that it is not built in a secure fabric which is governed by any kind of authority or any sort of master plan or regulating mechanism. It's the story of my life. Every plot we work on in Beirut is problematic. This is this is a typical view of our fabric, an extremely violent fabric. In the absence, again, of a common project, every single building becomes a kind of an isolated island, which looks at the outside as a violent or as a hostile environment. So in the absence of any kind of coherent common project, you end up with an extremely bad social fabric, and I'm at war with that, and I'm trying to resist that. I live in a house built on top of a building that I built around a frame, a window frame that is 6 by 12 meters, and basically looks at the city and this violent fabric as kind of a wake-up call. I don't face the city. This is a typically un-Mediterranean posture, whereby typical Mediterranean posture usually turns its back to the city and looks at the sea. I turn my back to the sea and look at the violence of the city. On top of my house are 2 cannons pointing south towards the enemy, but they're in fact obviously not military cannons, but projectors, lights. More recently, our highest or tallest building to this date, also located on a very sensitive site, literally a few meters away from what used to be the dividing line between East and West Beirut, a building which engages with the port and the port of Beirut and its problematic past. Here, it's a completely different take on the residential sector, whereby the building becomes a fortress and a kind of it takes on a very defensive posture. In and around the building are a number of devices, defensive devices, that have to do with the phobia of security, typical of these high-end residential developments. So you can see from one building to another, the tendency that I have to completely contradict myself, sometimes simultaneously, for the same program. This is an understanding of the context that is not consensual. I will never draw a consensual portrait of Beirut, but Beirut is full of contradictions, and I think every single situation leads me to sometimes a posture that is in complete contradiction with the previous one. This is the tale of the sentinel, the guard of the building. Right after its completion, riots started because we are on a very problematic area, on a demarcation line, and you can see this kind of very stark tower beginning to be exposed to violence again. This is a cemetery of unbuilt works, so we do work sometimes at different scales, built and conceived to end up in my office. Initially put in an art gallery. I drive to my office with a motorbike that I ride all the way to my desk. My office has a red floor. It keeps people awake. It's a very unorthodox thing to do because it's a very violent color and it's not peaceful. So this might explain why most of my collaborators don't make it for more than 2 years in my office. They get drained and they get the hell out of there. I was accused of polluting the river of Beirut, which runs by my office, with this red color, which is associated to the floor of my office. This red color that spilled into the Mediterranean. That was back in 2012. I've never designed museums, well, except this proposal for a museum of contemporary arts a couple of years back, where I've refused to put a building there, but instead I've decided to dig a hole and propose temporary galleries in the guts of the site, into literally the guts of the site, awaiting for us later on at some point to be able to build a museum when we'll be able to share a common history. So for me, there's no possibility for a consensual museum in Beirut. We call this project stage 0. What precedes the architectural act, which in my opinion sometimes is more important than architecture itself. We were dismissed obviously by dinosaurs at the jury. People such as Rem Koolhaas obviously don't understand Beirut and don't understand that a museum in Beirut cannot be a museum in Rotterdam. I'm very interested by speed. And again, was called by Francesco Bonami a few years back to work on the space of imprisonment. So we've designed a device that will serve to exchange prisoners of wars across enemy lines. This is a functional drone that strangely resembles the F-117 bomber, but it's a crawling drone. It's extremely slow. The prisoner crawls back to his camp and basically scans the territory as he's doing it and sends the information to the enemy, and that's the price of his freedom. We've worked a lot on Beirut. This is a take on the fetishization of some of the sites of Beirut in the post-war era that we've tried to connect, and we've imagined a circuit that will run along as another layer on top of the city and would enable the curious intellectual tourist to consume Beirut at an incredible speed. So this is going zipping in and out of the Holiday Inn Hotel ruin with this track, and we've imagined the capsule that would take the tourist at incredible speeds through Beirut in a very sensational manner. Obviously, this was a very critical posture. We built the damn thing, but then we were arrested by the secret services of the army, who thought that this was in fact a military device. This now rests at the Maxim Museum in Rome as a piece of art, as it was intended to be initially. On a more serious note, we also designed schools. This is in Armenia, the TUMO Center for Creative Technologies. Back in 2011, we've had a great collaboration, and we've designed many outlets for them since on various locations. This one is in Paris, with the flying workstations that go to the ground when they're in use and then go back to the ceiling to liberate the space to be used for other activities when there is no class being held. We've built these stations, so I enjoy also working at small scale and fabricating, and we ship them to Paris. So at the end of the day, I am not a museum builder or a social housing builder or a school builder or an opera builder, not because I didn't choose to do that, but because the context I operate in does not allow me to do that. And I don't think I will be awarded many serious architectural awards by the Architecture Academy, simply because I'm looked at as a kind of as an immoral architect sometimes, because I don't do public works and I work with pirates, and those are the ones who reward me. This is a proof of that. I became the mascot of the Johnny Walker whiskey back in 2010, 2011, which got me, in fact, much more exposure than, at least locally, than any architectural award would give me. If you look closely at this picture at the bottom, it's Paris Hilton, and I'm standing proudly above her. Not many architects could do that. That's it. Done.
Thank you very much, Bernard. You are from a science fiction movie, for sure. Alex, can you please introduce the next speaker?
Yes, Sherban, thank you. And thank you, Bernard. It was a very fast-paced, interesting expose. We are now passing to our next speaker. And this is Erick van Egeraat. He comes from the Netherlands. More precisely, he's obviously an architect and an author. He heads the architectural practice that is based in Rotterdam, with offices also in Moscow, Budapest, and Prague. And he's best known for his project of the ING Group headquarters in Budapest, the Drents Museum in Assen, the Rock Tower in Amsterdam, the office building, incineration line in Roskilde in Denmark, the main building, and an auditorium in Leipzig for the university, or the corporate university of Sberbank in Moscow. I must say these are just a few of the projects that I have also seen on their website. And he and his office are a winner of the RIBA award in 2007, the Best Building Awards for 2011 and 12, and the European Property Award in 2013. On April 26th, 2016, Erick van Egeraat was decorated Officer of the Order of Oranje Nassau. This decoration was presented to Erick van Egeraat by the mayor of Rotterdam on behalf of the King of the Netherlands. I'm most eagerly awaiting his presentation. Erick, you have the floor. Thank you. I think you have to turn on your microphone. It has remained. Yes, great. Here you are.
Okay, I start with this title, Galvanize the City. It's actually sort of an idea which I have developed over the years. I work now 40 years as an architect, and I work quite a lot abroad, but I have done also quite substantial amount of work in the Netherlands. And this is the area where my office is in Rotterdam. And I was thinking when I was invited to make this speech, what actually is changing today. Because I see a lot of my clients now calling me and asking me what we should do, how we should respond. Are we going to make different architecture? Are we going to make different offices? Are we going to change fundamentally the way we see the world, or how would we respond as architects to this? And I've, let's say, came to the little bit of conclusion that, let's say, there is, of course, a reason to change. There's a reason to do things, but not different from what we have already done, should have been doing over the past, let's say, 40 years. And I explain you like this, that basically we have not done all the things we could have done and improving our lives in the cities. And I think not necessarily that this has to be blamed to the architects, but I think it is definitely a moment to reflect on this. Instead of believing that we are going to fundamentally change our way of working, we could at least start by doing what we promised ourselves already so many years. I start by a short introduction, a small anecdote about myself. This was when I was 3 years old, and it sort of embodies for me still a little bit what architects do. You see here my brother and sister on top of a giant snowball. And it's clear that they think what they have made, this snowball, is perfect and nice. You can see that I don't think so. I see it as something cold, ugly, and unattractive. That's sort of the dilemma many architects face. They have brilliant ideas, but are they made for themselves, or are they made for the people they claim they serve, or they claim they work for? Yes, in 1972, I sort of finished my high school and I started studying. And this was happening in 1972. A group of people basically claiming that it is time for us to think a little bit about pollution, to think a little bit about how we produce food, how we not deplete our resources in the world, and how we could basically make a cleaner or maybe more sustainable, the word was not really popular at the time, but more sustainable environment. And sadly enough, during my whole career, I've been discussing these subjects with all my clients, whether they are private or whether they are from a state or a city. They all are potentially interested in doing something. But in 40 years, with a body of work of over 100 buildings built, I have hardly ever really realized a fully sustainable project. And that is something which I think maybe this time should make us think. This is the latest project I'm working on. It's a small exhibition territory where we would like to show how you could, let's say, work in a more sustainable manner in a small district for living. And I made this tower. It's completely made of wood, only 20 floors, fully self-sufficient in terms of energy and waste. And I'm not sure if it's true, but despite the fact that the idea was to finish this project when this district would be opened in 2022, my client maybe conveniently said, well, let's wait for a moment, let's do this a little bit later, let's see if we can't start doing this in 2023 when the exhibition is done. Nothing to say whether the intentions were all bad, just a demonstration of the fact that we are all full of great ideas, we are all full of great ambitions, but it is so sad that we don't really follow them through. And I think to a certain extent, as architects, we also have to look a little bit at ourselves. I mean, what do architects do? I mean, is it really so that they have very often, and all my colleagues, all the discussions, all the discourses are quite high profile. People have a lot of ambitions, but are we really able and serious with what we want to do? Everybody understands that it is necessary to be more sustainable. It's closing the cycles, making sure that we're not following in linear processes, but in circular processes. Everybody understands this, but are we doing it? Sometimes I feel that most architects prefer to see themselves as naive idealists, as people who really like to demonstrate something which is undone, not done, new, innovative, but not really necessarily always the best thing for everybody to be involved in. And that's what I would now think is maybe this time could help us to be a little bit more modest, maybe a little bit more approachable. If you see what architects do, this is a tower by RMGM in, of all places, St. Petersburg. I don't know if you know St. Petersburg, but this tower has very little to do with that city. If this is the project done not in, let's say, the 1960s, but is built in 2010 in Moscow. Are we really helping? Do we really care? This is an exhibition made by Rem Koolhaas, who started to explain that architecture is impossible because of technology. Now promoting that we should not focus on cities, but we should focus on the countryside. I'm not sure. Are we sometimes forgetting the real issues? Are we forgetting to look at the things which are really happening around us? Are we trying to find excuses in a crisis, or are we trying to use the crisis to improve what we actually do? Everybody knows that the cities are, let's say, only good and functional when there is a lot of diversity, when people are able to meet and see all different walks of life, all different type of qualities are mixed. All those cities do function perfectly well. All cities which are monofunctional, which have one function, are not really working well, including Venice. Great city, but not a sustainable form or for a city life. Look at cities like Detroit, or compare this with the city of Amsterdam, which flourishes for over 500, 600 years without much problems. One of the biggest number of startups in the world, one of the biggest diverse variety of people living there with all kinds of different backgrounds. Or look at cities, maybe a little bit posh, but cities like Vienna. Perfectly livable, high quality spaces with a lot of green around everywhere. Sometimes we just don't listen to people, like here in Moscow, where people are just absolutely not listened to when they are speaking about housing. Or here, there are examples very well how you can change this into this. Not dramatic, not maybe the best architectural, let's say, development, but a livable place which is sustainable. Places like this which can be changed from a simple, let's say, unattractive place into a far more attractive place for people. All buildings which can be reused, city streets which can be regenerated, and ultimately parks which can be protected. Because no matter how great your architecture is, try to design this one day and try to recreate this kind of quality in your buildings. It will be very difficult for you to achieve. And I have very little time seen architecture that has a quality of this view. Yes, so what can we actually do? We can make things greener. We can add ourselves to what we have. We don't need to change the whole world. We don't need to fundamentally come up with completely new concepts. We can work with fabric which we have, and we can simply start embrace the diversity which we have. Make sure that we identify a catalog of solutions and try to think out of the box wherever possible, not to replace something, but to simply add to it. And finally, of course, to make sure that our public domain is maintained and made attractive continuously. And above all, we can all do these things right now. We don't need to wait. We don't need to have brilliant ideas. We just have to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. This is, again, a very interesting call to action. For our next moment, we will, I would like to have Sherban introduce our next film.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Eric. It was really, really clear what you call for. We have another call now from one of our share members. This is Habibeh Majdabadi from Iran. Because Zoom and Google products are not working in Iran, I will not develop why. She sent us a video which I would like to ask you to watch, because she's making a call for futuristic visions toward an architecture after the pandemic situation. I'm asking for the technical. Yeah, we have.
No, the world is changing. Changes that disrupts previous relationships and naturally change the future of city and architecture. Today, architects are facing some of these changes, and they are preparing themselves for the future. This is a pause that suddenly stops the war and attempts to disrupt many definitions. The emergency condition that has obliged billions of people to pass weeks or even months at home in quarantine conditions has changed our perception of time and space. I think it's time for architects to emerge in their historical role as thinkers and planners, as they have accepted previously this role at various stages through history. It is time to start theorizing the conditions of being and acting in the world future. In the current situation, the question of survival has become once again the first concern of mankind. The city and public space have lost their functions, and home have become a safe haven to protect mankind from external dangers. The house once again established its prehistorical function as a refuge. In Iran, houses has always been refuge, as we call it char-divari. But today, the whole world is dramatically about staying at home. The main questions are, in case the current situation persists for a long time, how will people react to such unsecure world? How should be the settlements of the future? What impact these changes will have on public spaces, such as streets, squares, shopping malls, cinemas, and museums? How would be the dwelling of the future? Architecture as a safe haven for survival is not a new idea. Radical concept of archigram, hypothetical meta-projects of 1960s had similar motivations. Projects such as Walking City by Ron Herron and Living Pod by David Green. They can be seen as a response to the war's concerns during 1960s. Concerns about the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and the fear of atomic and chemical weapons, which made the issue of survival a public concern like it is today. I think one of the most important debates in today's architecture is how do architects play their historical role today? What is the vision of the future of the city and architecture? What is the mission of architects in this new era? In the current situation, many artists and architects have closed their offices and workshops for an undefined period of time. Today, we can individually participate in collective effort for developing fresh concepts and futuristic visions towards architecture and the city during pandemic condition. I invite international architects and artists to share their ideas. I hope the synergy of the people who adhere to this movement will enrich our thoughts and vision about the future. This is also to invite all of us to share our hypothetical apocalyptic scenario caused by series of pandemic persisted over years. I'm talking to you from Tehran during quarantine days. Thank you.
Well, I've just sent Habibeh a message with a picture with her speaking to all of us. I hope we can meet her soon. And now I'm passing the microphone back to Alex because we have to open a debate session, but we are starting with some of our partners. Alex.
Thank you, Sherban. We have a couple of partners of Share Architects today with us, and it's my pleasure to introduce Şeyma Elçin from Şişecam Flat Glass in Turkey. Şeyma has been working as a product responsible at Şişecam Flat Glass since 2014, and she's part of the architectural team developing solutions to match the requirements of architectural projects, providing glass consultancy services. So welcome, Şeyma.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Well, yes, now I think you will have some questions, or should I?
Yes, I have a question. I'm just trying to find my information because there are a lot of different
Yeah, of course.
information here on my screen. It's more difficult than having just papers with in front of you. So just 1 second. So here it is. Our question for you, Şeyma, is how do the right building materials affect human health? And how would you describe it considering glass?
Yes, thank you for your questions. First of all, I would like to say that we are having difficult times all over the world, and I sincerely hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. When the subject is evaluated according to human health in these days, spaces with natural daylight becomes very important. Before COVID-19, we were spending over 80% of our lives within buildings. After that, unfortunately, we're spending all of our times in our offices or houses. Our quality of life strongly depends on daylight because humans actually programmed to live at the outdoors. Daylight plays a fundamental role in our body clock. Numerous research studies have demonstrated that glazing has profound implications in terms of human health, happiness, and of course productivity. And I would like to give some examples of natural daylight benefits. First of all, in healthcare, our topic in these days, research findings demonstrate that access to daylight provides a reduction in the average length of hospital stay, quicker post-operative recovery, reduced requirements for pain relief, quicker recovery from depressive illness, and disinfected quality. And another point is educational buildings. Access to daylight has been shown to result in a dramatic improvement in student academic achievement, their behavior, calmness, and focus. In the workplaces, numerous studies have identified that employees prefer to work near windows which fully utilize natural light rather than artificial lights. And actually in buildings of all types, including the residential sector, many of the studied benefits associated with daylight and connections to the outside world can be equally realized, thus contributing to sensations of well-being. Our homes are the places for us to rest and sleep. This miraculous material is able to go beyond being material which only takes the daylight into the place. Now it's meeting the different needs with its different features. For example, energy efficiency. It provides safety and security, controls the noise. I would like to tell you about energy efficiency shortly. 80% of energy consumed in a building is used for heating and cooling. Therefore, When addressing the energy efficiency of the building sector, the reduction of energy waste is the key priority. A well or highly performant building shell generates the highest thermal comfort and avoids waste. It is the cost-effective solution to address the energy demand of the building, and it presents these distinctive benefits for the occupants in terms of comfort, health, and well-being, for instance. And what is more, glass products present the smallest environmental footprint across all life cycle assessment indicators compared to other parts of the building shell and offer distinctive benefits resulting from their main functionality. And all these benefits, like improved comfort and sensations of well-being for occupants and a healthier indoor environment, have been widely researched and acknowledged. Thanks to the continuous innovations, glazing solutions have achieved very high levels of energy performance while their environmental impacts have been minimized. So these are what can I say about glass and human health. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Şeyma. And back to you, Sherban. We have another.
Yes, true. We are staying in the field of light, but now I'll pass to somebody else dealing with artificial light. I will introduce Dennis Bishkup, who's regional manager, marketing manager, Southeastern Europe in Zumtobel Group. Dennis, welcome. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? I hope you can.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Well, just a few words about you. You were promoted to the position of Business Development Manager in the outdoor lighting segment for a region of 21 countries in Southern Eastern Europe and Middle Asia. So you are the youngest person to hold this position. So please allow me to address your question related to your duties and what are you doing there? Because there's a lot of technology in daylighting. I simply ask you, how can you, as a lighting solution provider, assist architects in the region?
Thank you for your question. So actually, in general, we in Zumtobel Group, Southern Eastern Europe, are covering currently 10 countries from 4 offices. Since, as I can see, most of the participants are from Romania, I would like to point out that we as well have office in Bucharest and sales representatives in Cluj and Timișoara. Although most of us currently are working from home offices, production lines are optimized and we can fully support you practically anytime, anywhere. So to keep things short, our idea is that if you have any project that needs lighting, but you know actually that every product needs lighting, so feel free to contact us and we will be more than happy to provide full service from lighting design of general, either emergency lighting, to control, suite, or without human-centric lighting. And of course, our service as support to few architects is always free of charge from our side. So we are here actually to support you and to develop something all together. So that shortly will be from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Very short and very comprehensive. Now we have a debate session with the speakers, and I will try also ask my co-moderator Alex to try to support me and to share some questions we would address to the speakers. Later on, I remember that everybody may enter into the debate. Alex, do you want to start?
Yes, Sherban, thank you. I was personally very interested in all 3 of our speakers' areas of presentation, and I wrote down a couple of things for each of them, and I would like to start with a topic which maybe transcends all of the presentations. Obviously, it's somehow everything is connected to the situation that we are in and the pressure or the questions or the uncertainties that we feel all around us. And these have been addressed, this major big question mark I have read through in all three presentations. In Piotr's presentation regarding maybe the question if it is a time to think back and go back to recuperating the medieval fortress attitude of separation. In Bernard Khoury's question, that, or maybe what I understood is that maybe this situation that we are in will act as an equalizer between the so dramatically distant models of the city that we aspire for and the more complex situations that we're in. And for Erick van Egeraat, I think the question was quite clear: are we doing the right thing? My question to everybody right now is, do you think that we should go as far as to go beyond the topic of construction and city building and maybe question, I don't know, the economic model in itself? Is it something that is too far-fetched, or is it something that could be tackled at least on a philosophical level in these times? Who wants to go first?
I have to appoint the speaker, I'm afraid.
Well, since you opened the microphone, Piotr, please go ahead. So should we go as far as to maybe rethink the way our economical model is working, or is it too far out?
Well, I'm very skeptic in a way I see the profession of architect. I believe we respond to what the market asks us to do and what the clients want us to do. And I doubt we as architects, we can change the economic model of the civilizations we live in. And so far, I believe that we all of us, we wait, and we try to imagine the future, the nearest future, and we act as the situation wants us to act. And I don't believe that we working for our clients, we can change the economical model of the modern society. Thank you.
Yes, I fully agree with you, Piotr. I think we as architects have to come to terms with the fact that, in fact, our role is obviously not what we are taught it is at school, or what we would like to think it is. You know, given the bigger picture. It's interesting. You can't design a hotel that has more than 30 or 40 rooms without a hotel consultant. You can't design a train station without a traffic expert or consultant. You can't design an airport. You can't design a jail. In fact, you can't do anything beyond a certain scale without resorting to consultants or specialists that are in fact not from an architectural background. They are in fact behind the DNAs of the projects. And when you look at the bigger picture, you see that our impact on cities and on planning these major programs or buildings or infrastructures is not what it was up until maybe the 19th century and on. We didn't catch up with technology, first acceleration, the mechanical age, and now the electronic age, which if anything, re-questions the very fundamentals of our practice, because we work with stone and we're really imprisoned in the Stone Age. So this whole deal about us architects having a great impact on cities, I think we have to have, you know, the humility to recognize the fact that we're very small players, and we come really, really at the very end of the chain with less and less powers and less relevance to what we're doing. So what I suggest we do is at least have the courage to face this, sometimes these very difficult situations, these very sour situations, may they be political, economical, or whatever, that are imposed on us on certain programs, and revise, you know, the way we even represent and picture the practice of architecture. I'm amused and sometimes annoyed to see what the architectural media, you know, focuses on today, and how it promotes itself and how we promote supposedly great architecture. It's always through very consensual, idealized projects, but we never really look at what precedes the architectural act. And I'm afraid that architecture is being more and more portrayed as a sort of an autonomous practice. It's kind of glorified, fetishized in many ways, and I find this extremely dangerous. I think it's about time that architects, you know, of course it's great to design museums and schools and public projects. I mean, I envy those who do that and have the luxury to do that, and that's great, we'll always need that. But I think architects and architectural media in general should really focus on the more problematic, what is sometimes dismissed as being vulgar and irrelevant and not worth the attention of architecture. And that is, in fact, 99% of what makes our cities. So we should deal with that shit. We should deal with that crap. We should have the courage to manipulate these extremely sour and difficult situations and try to steer things in the right direction, given our very limited means, and by resorting to anything given to us, you know, anything that serves the cause, even if it means collaborating with the pirates, right? If you're doing the right thing, or at least you're attempting to do that. So I have a problem with the way the architectural world communicates in general, you know, this whole deal with, you know, who gets awarded what, the humility of architects, you know, in a very perverted way, portrayed as extremely responsible people and so on. So that's bullshit. You know, we're hiding behind our fingers, glorifying our practice through idealized projects and polished situations, which are not what, you know, the sour, you know, real realities are. And I think it's about time we wake up. And I think it's in situations of crisis that maybe we get that little shake that you know will make us react.
Thank you, Bernard. Erick, what is your take on this topic? Your microphone, please.
Let me say, first of all, I'm quite impressed by the work of Bernard. For a very simple reason is that I have done quite a lot of work in different countries. And I have always tried to understand that whatever value I bring from one country, it never is that value in another country. So I've always more or less felt very comfortable to understand the world as highly fragmented and maybe call it more positively, diverse. And it is quite useless to take your ideas, let's say from Lebanon, and try to implement them in the Netherlands or the other way around. They are completely unrelated situations. And there are completely unrelated conditions where we also should not even try to compare or try to find one general approach on how to tackle all these questions. So if your question is, should we challenge or should we question our way of living in the world, that is almost an undoable thing. We live very, very diverse, and I'm very happy for this. What I'm very much in favor of, and in a way that's why I was mentioning that I like the work I saw from Bernard, is that you lead by example. You lead by showing what is possible. You lead by showing what values you can create. And they are different. They should be different. They should be convincing, and they should be, let's say, maybe provocative, they should be maybe powerful, but they should be about something. And the one thing I think what we cannot afford ourselves is do nothing or do mediocre stuff. All the world needs something which is more, let's say, more, better, different than what you possibly can make. So I think we should use this type of moments not to start to find fundamental answers to fundamental questions or to find universal solutions. There are none, some of them. And if they would be there, I wouldn't want to have them. What I would like to see happening is that people now use the opportunity which they have to make something which is an exceptional value in the place where they work, for the people they work for. And if we would do this, just start, do something, I think we are improving ourselves already quite a lot. Forget about all the generalizations and forget about all the convincing each other that your ideas are better than mine. Or, I mean, I live with Rem Koolhaas in one country for 40 years and I have never ever agreed on anything what he wrote. Doesn't mean his work is not good, and I'm sure that my work is good enough too.
Thank you. Sherban?
Well, fantastic round of answers. At the first question, can I build upon it and ask again at my turn to our speakers to recommend some more things to architects. We are involved in practice, of course, many of us. We are involved in education, some others or the same. And we are involved in administration, in public administration, local administration, central administration. We deal with approvals, with legal framework, and so on and so forth. So I'm asking you again, I'm not referring specifically to architects working with pirates or architects working with international clients or local clients. I'm just asking you to recommend to our species, to other architects, some important things at this moment, as you said, the wake-up moment. Who wants to try?
Well, I can try because, let's say, the word pirates is an interesting word. I have never worked with pirates, and I'm not sure I ever will, but I've worked with almost every possible person, let's say, nice, crook, criminal, white collar, bad, friendly, unpolite, uncivilized in the world. That's very simple. If you work 40 years, that's what you come across. So I think that's not necessarily, let's say, a means to judge what we are doing. What we are doing is, let's say, to see if what you try to express is also visible, if it is really there. Not just a storyline, not just a hypothesis or an approach or a concept, but something which is physically there. That's what architecture is about. It is trying to change the environment in which we live, to modify it, change it, temper it, whatever way you like to see. And in situations like this, you might find people around you, you might find pirates, you might find very nice, friendly women who would like to give you a task to do something nice in order to improve the situation where we're in. And my advice is just take each of these chances very seriously and make sure you create something you can really see, you can really experience. Don't spend hours, months, or years on things which at the end of the day lead to nothing. And I'm afraid that if you just look at the subject, which I tried to explain, the issue of sustainability, I mean, do you realize how much bullshit has been written about this subject? How much people speak about it? I know it for 40 years. And for 40 years, I tried to convince clients to do things, and there's not a single client who has not said to me that it is not important. But out of hundreds of clients I have worked with, not a single one has fully embraced it and pulled it through until the end. Maybe this learns us that we need to focus on things we can manage, which we can do. I'd rather make a very nice toilet, which works, than a museum which never is there. I think we all should do the same.
Indeed, Eric, thank you so much. Piotr, Bernard, would you help me to build upon?
Yeah, I will dwell on this, maybe elaborate a bit more on this question of sustainability that Eric has brought up, and I of course fully agree with him also. I think, you know, we've witnessed what I would call the dictatorship of the green lately, sometimes very often, in fact, at least where I come from, for marketing reasons. So they come to you with, you know, with a lead certificate set of conditions that's totally absurd sometimes, given the context. So they try to apply these kind of universal rules, which turn in most of the cases into a marketing plot more than anything else. Again, I think we should really, every project has a very particular set of situations. Every context has an extremely particular set of conditions, and one has to be extremely precise. What applies at a very specific moment in time in a very specific condition may not apply somewhere else, and we should understand that. I'm a fan of locals sometimes because they know extremely well the context in which they operate. That doesn't mean that we cannot work in foreign territories. Context is not always geographical also. I can feel at home, you know, 10 hours away by plane from where I live, and I cannot feel at home literally next door, the next street corner, because the set of situations are very foreign to me. So one has to be, again, extremely humble and very realistic, and produce meaning.
Thank you so much. That's quite comprehensive. Piotr, would you like to complete?
It's just a few words, if you ask me. We always try to, in our studio with my partner in business, Kazimierz Łatak, we always try to, at every project we start, we try to understand the question somebody is asking us by this commission, and with our answer we try to find what is specific in this project, what is specific in the site, in the program, in a location, in a client, and all our projects are different. They are different style. You cannot recognize them directly that it's our project. I would say that we try to understand the question. We try to give our most appropriate answer, and this is the answer is always site specific, and the answer is always filtered through our let's say sensibility. And sensibility is something which comes together with the experience. I strongly believe it. And the experience is not only the architectural magazines you watch, not only the architectural websites you are browsing. It's everything you experience in your life forms your sensibility. And I believe that the experience we are having right now, closed at home, I believe this is an experience which strongly influences on our future answers, on our future designs the clients ask us to do. And we will be somehow I believe, changed by this experience, and I hope this will happen, because I believe that the more experienced that you are, the more appropriate the answer is. And in this term, I try to take the advantages of the current situation, and I hope we will be, let's say, better architects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr. So in the end, with this subtle answer, you are not only skeptical, you are also optimistic. Thank you very much. I have to introduce somebody else in this debate. Please allow me to have a new guest on board, to introduce Laurian Ghinițoiu, who's a Romanian architect, which is one of the most interesting figures related to architectural photography. He's using photography as an instrument to document the built environment. He's an architect who completed his studies in Romania in 2010, followed by a master at EIA 2012-2014 in Dessau in Germany. His photographs achieved excellent results in international architecture photography competitions in the past 5 years. Recently won the overall winner in 3 categories in the Architectural Photography Awards 2019. His work is featured by major publishers, Phaidon, Domus, Taschen, El Croquis, and selected as covers for the most influencing architectural magazines such as Architectural Record or A+U. Through his collaborators, you can recognize big offices as DCA, OMA, BIG, and others. So Laurian is going to talk about I've Seen Before. This is his title, but I would not say anything else. Just invite you, Laurian, if you can hear me, to take the lead, to take the floor. Thank you very much for being here.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all?
Yes, sure.
So, as you mentioned, it's called I've Seen It Before. Can I move the list or my video? I cannot move the, unfortunately.
At the top of your screen, you have a View Options tab, request.
I requested it.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to just click on the screen, and then you can.
Okay, perfect. Can I go back? Okay, perfect. So from the, I try to relate it with the pandemic, and what I realized that since everything started, we started to count everything in days as a new, 2 seconds. Can you see me? Okay, perfect. So we started to count everything in days, and I tried to make a short CV. Also, everything related with a number of days. But what I want to point is that the moment when I switched from architecture to photography was 1,810 days ago. But when I realized that actually photography, while talking with some friends and making a lot of jokes, I realized that actually photography means social distancing. So from there, I started to think even more about all this new vocabulary that started to be that we started to be bombed in the media. And at the same time, I've been invited to this talk. So I tried to relate these two and this vocabulary with all these experiences I had in the past 5 years. And I will start with the word of quarantine, which is basically people isolation in different moments of the time. And one of the projects that I photographed, one of the moments that I photographed, it's the Tempelhof in Berlin, which is considered one of the symbol of liberty in the city. And what you see in the back are the hangars where the plane were parked some time before, which in 2015 they became they became shelter for refugees. More or less 2,000 people were stuck there, and they had quite the strict rules of getting in and out the place. Another place which is also related with that, it's called the Jungle. It's in Calais, which is in the northwest port of France, in direct connection through the Eurotunnel with England. And most of as most of the people coming from Africa or Middle East were crossing all Europe in order to get to this point, but they got stopped at the border, and this refugee camp was created. It was one of the biggest one, and they stayed there more or less 1 year and a half. After that, it was dismantled, and within this time, they created all this function. This is a club night, and they created churches and mosques and restaurants and so on. One of the next places that I've been, it's called the North Cemetery in Manila, which since 56 years ago, it got used by people who were cleaning all these mausoleums. And it's already the third generation of people that they started to live there. And what it struck me was the fact that most of the people told me that that they felt more safe within these edges of the cemetery, because the other option for them was to live in a slum, which is very dangerous. This is the place where they had the school, and this is a place where they were playing bingo and shops and so on. So all the functions that you could imagine and you would need. Another word, of course, is the social distancing, which is a physical distance. And we started to complain, I think, all the world, after we got stuck in our apartments, which are probably, I don't know, a minimum of 30 square meters up to maybe 100 or 200 or so on. And it came to my mind this moment in Dharavi in Mumbai, which is a slum that has a density of 1 million people in 2 square kilometers, which is basically 2 square meters per capita, including the public space. But even that, these people live in a place where they have an informal economy of $1 billion a year, which I found it fascinating, and at the same time challenging, of course. Another place that I visited is China in Guangzhou, and it's Shipai. It's an area that is called an urban village, and it's one of the densest one and the latest alive. And what it's interesting here is that they have like around 170 streets in between this texture of the city, but it's the light hardly gets to the street level. And what I found it interesting is the fact that they even called these, they are calling these buildings handshaking buildings, because they literally can shake the hands between the windows in the apartments. And actually all these photos are taken during the day, as mentioned before. Lockdown, I've seen it as a dystopia, where you have all these empty cities without people, without cars, without bike, without everything. And I realized that I've been to Namie. It's the city which was evacuated in 2011 after the explosion of the nuclear factory, a nuclear reactor in Japan, and which was open, I think, a year ago, but you still cannot see life in there. Only if you wait till the night, and some houses are lit, and I guess that's an obvious reason that people are living there. And I've been to another place which is also a bit dystopic. It's Pardis city in Iran, which is an investment from the government, but due to lack of infrastructure and facilities, people are not really looking to get to move there. And also, what I found interesting was the fact that while I visited Iran and Tehran, the city was under a small revolution, and they cut the internet. So I had to find, it was very complicated to find this place without Google Maps, without any technology. And another place I've been to, it's called Burj Al Babas, which you might know about. It's a place in Turkey where an investor decided to make this French chateau in the middle of nowhere. The problem is that he built so many in a very small area that actually you couldn't really enjoy the whole concept of a chateau. And I think there are around 500 or more of them they started, and of course you get bankrupt, and everything it's in ruin now. And of course we heard a lot about higher risk and who is the population of higher risk, and of course it's always the lower class. And I've been always interested in this relation between the upper class and lower class, and I will show an example about the Prada Foundation, which of course it's one of the very interesting buildings that I've seen lately, designed by Renkulas and OMA, that has this gold facade, literally gold facade. And this was taken during the opening. And you have the elite came to see the last art, the last pieces of contemporary art, which are facing this train tracks. And what is interesting is that on the other side, there is a living situation where people from Africa are living, which are facing every single day this gold facade and the Prada Foundation, which are probably also the people which are selling the Prada fake bags around Milan. And Bernard also talked about, I've been a year ago in Beirut, and he already talked about Yabani. That is this, so I'm not going to mention it again, but I find it very fascinating. I'm very happy that he mentioned it as well, that the fact that these Syrian families are living in a piece of architecture that was designed to show the back to this context and be completely disconnected from it. And these are only a few examples of moments where I've been synchronizing somehow without my will with these moments, with an earthquake in Taiwan 2 years ago. And this was the moment when they were mourning the people that died. And of course, you know, the terrorist attack from 2001, where almost 3,000 people died. And every year they turn on these lights in that time. And the Kosovo War, where 12,000 people died in '99, and they still keep this building alive as a memory to this, as a piece of the museum, I guess. And this is a photo that I took a few days ago in Japan, on the East Coast, where it was the tsunami, and 15,000 people died. And yeah, I guess my time is already finished, but there are so many examples that I still have photographed or not, which are dealing with this situation that we already seen before.
Well, thank you so much, Laurian. That was a fantastic connection you made from words to pictures to images. You also connected places we were speaking about today. Iran, Turkey, Lebanon, and other places. Really, thank you very much. It was indeed fantastic. So now we can continue with the debate we have with the public and moderators. I'm looking for questions. There are already 4 questions in the list. Shall I start, Alex? Can Can I start?
Yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead. I need a short break. Sorry.
I'm just taking the first question which came. It's coming from Salmo Albatal from Düsseldorf, Germany. And it's a question to Bernard. But first of all, I'm asking Salmo if he wants to address himself the question, because he can receive the right to enter in a video or audio mode. I'm waiting also for an instruction from the technical staff if Salmo wants to address the question himself, or I should read the question myself. I will do it. So a question for Bernard as he approached the subject in his intervention. I'm interested in the architect's relevance crisis and in the dimension of this need of the architect to reinvent itself today. Do you think that the architect's role in society become more political, social, while his role in the process is decreasing because of multiplication of actors in the process and automatization of the work? Bernard, I hope the question is quite clear for you.
Well, I wish I had a clear answer to that. I think it's a very good question, but it's difficult to give a clear and general answer to that. But I would say that I want to believe that we can reinvent our tools and our territories of intervention. And I'm a firm believer that architecture can have some sort of political and social relevance, sometimes in the least expected territories. And again, I think the practice of architecture has dismissed or not taken seriously many territories that are, in my opinion, where the battle should be held. Again, and not necessarily in the most idealized conditions that the architectural media portrays. We're taught in schools that, or at least I was taught in school back in the late 80s and early 90s, with the Western influence I might have had at the time, being also relatively close to France, that if you haven't built a public building, you're a failed architect. And to a certain extent, it still applies to this date. If you see what's being glorified by the guardians of our practice, glorified through publications, through awards, through all sorts of recognitions, it is again and again, most of the time, in the very confined and very select territories, which I find very much idealized and not necessarily reflective of a very complex world and a very problematic world we live in. So I think, every architect should take very seriously sometimes what could seem to be the most absurd or the least political agenda to start with. And if you really scratch a little bit beyond the surface, you'll see that your local barber shop or the little grocery store down the street could be a great project, an extremely meaningful project that has relevance politically, culturally, socially, economically, and so on and so forth. So I think we should work at all scales. We should never dismiss sometimes what can seem to be the most or the least interesting or the program that has no political content at the outset can sometimes be, in my opinion, the most relevant one. I don't know if it answers your question.
Okay, I think it does, but I have to apologize. I read another question and I'm asking the technical staff if they can introduce Salmo with his question. I read the question of Alexandra Movila. Alexandra, I hope Bernard answered your question. So can we have Salmo?
Hi. Hello.
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah. So hey everyone, thank you for this opportunity. It's really great to attend. And my question is to Bernard. Thank you so much. And yep, one moment, please. Yeah. I was exposed. I lived in the crisis for 7 years back in my country, Damascus, Syria, and I was in between Beirut and Damascus, and the building of Bernard touched me a lot because I was living in the crisis while I was visiting, while I was while I was seeing this this building. It touched me in many ways. I'm curious a lot, and always I'm visiting the website of Bernard to see to discover honestly in every visit. What take my attention always this aborted project that is not accepted, and how many there were projects that it didn't build after the huge success of BO18. Bernard, you got a great success in BO18, and then after that, many projects were not get accepted, and it was not be built. How us, I don't know, as a young generation or as a young architects, can we face this? Can we face this in this when we want to present something daring or something not relating to our context or our memories? Same time, we want to be in the scene. Same time, we need to present ourselves as our individuality. Let's say. I don't know if it was clear a little bit.
I don't think I'm the only one on this panel who has a big number of aborted projects. I'm sure most of my colleagues here have shared the same. Had a lot of projects and situations that have shared that same fate. It's part of the practice, and it's not always because of their rejection or their refusal. Sometimes it was, but sometimes the conditions just didn't lead to construction. That happens, and it's extremely painful because you get very much attached and engaged in a project. And I'm someone who really likes to build because I think a building takes on a completely different dimension when it faces the reality of the build, the reality of the cities, the reality of the experiences that you don't always predict. I'm not against paper architecture. I think I've enjoyed and I don't regret any of these experiences. We must have close to 300 projects in our archives. So I've probably hit 10%, 15% with success to construction, and then most of it dies and ends up in your archives. But it has its life and it has its importance, and I don't regret those. And yes, we try to push every situation to the limits of what's possible, because we have to work within the limits of what's possible if you decide to build. And it's really about taking that to a limit that still can fall within a certain reality. If you can reinvent that reality and give it some meaning, then that's great. And I think great projects are projects that can tackle the real in a different way and not necessarily surrender to a program for what's given and that's it. I think, again, architects should get involved in what precedes the architectural act, because this is sometimes far more important than the act itself. And yes, you have to work within what's within the reach, within what's in your reach. I don't know if it answers your question.
I really hope it does. Thank you very much, Salmo. Thank you very much, Bernard. I'm reading a question now, which I got from the public, a question from Mihaela Shushna. It's addressed in Romanian to Laurian, but I will translate it into English for everybody can understand it. So the question is, Laurian, what would be, in this context, the most impressive image?
Not sure exactly how to answer that. I believe it's. I will give an example from the slide that I showed. I think it's this contrast between classes with the Prada Foundation gold facade designed by the Pritzker architect Rem Koolhaas and so on, and the contrast with the refugees living across the street, which are facing constantly this shiny facade. Yeah, maybe that's something that I'm mostly interested in looking in finding this contrast around the world. And of course, whenever it's an architecture involved, I believe that makes it even more strong as a situation.
Thank you very much. I'm having a question from Yong Wo from Luxembourg, who wrote that he wants to address the questions, but I don't have the question here. I'm asking technical staff to make the connection eventually, or I can pass to somebody else. Yeah, I'm having a question from Vlad Bashka. The question is regarding the economical aspect of architecture and how it influences the bigger picture of economy. I'm not sure that I understand exactly this question. Maybe some of the panelists do. Do you want to intervene again on the economical aspects eventually?
Well, I strongly believe that we always respond to the questions the market and the clients ask us. So in time of a crisis, we have less to work. In time of a prosperity, we have clients, they ask us to do some designs, new projects, and so on, so on. So I believe that what we do is just mirroring the economy. It's not the opposite. I mean, we are not working for the economy goes better. We just respond what the world is asking us.
Thank you, Piotr. I have a question from Georgia Dancheva. She's a student in architecture. She says, hello, everyone. As an architect student, I would like to ask you, what is your inspiration? And I would like to ask you which project was the hardest one for you and how you overcome the difficulty. My questions are to all the panelists. Okay, I hope it will not take very long. About your inspiration, I think it was tackled up to now, but anything else for Georgia, if you like to add? Perhaps Erick?
Yes, well, my inspiration is very simple. It's from everyday life. There's not much more I need than just be part of this world to be inspired for my projects. The project which maybe was for me one of the hardest ones, well, is maybe the project I did in Leipzig. I was asked to reconstruct a church which was demolished in 1968, and that church was demolished in the center of Leipzig by the Communist Party, because that place was a gathering place for people who were opposing the, let's say, the DDR regime. So in the 1990s, after unification, they tried to find a solution what to do with this building, to reconstruct it, to build something new. And I decided to do both. to build a building on the outside, which was completely new, and on the inside, more or less to build something which could give the memory to this Gothic church. And my client was the state of Saxon, a client which had money enough, I thought, and the project which is supposed to be able to bring a lot of things together. East and West Germany, people are in favor of traditional and for more modern work, but nevertheless, it took me more than 14 years to build and complete this project. I'm not saying that in itself was the most difficult. The fact that you work 14 years on a project, that happens more than once. But I had to learn to understand that even though I had sympathy for those who were pushing to get this project done, I also had to understand that not everything can be resolved by architecture only. Some people simply don't want to, let's say, accept certain things, and you can't think that your work can, let's say, can mend all wounds which have been made in the past. Fortunately, I'm able to say now that the building in itself is a great project. Most people like it very much. And I think that the fact that we were able to realize it gave quite a lot of satisfaction, despite the very, very painful and slow process I had to go through for 14 years.
Thank you, Eric. Bernard or Piotr, do you want to speak a little bit on your inspiration? Bernard.
They're very different. They're very different, but don't get me wrong. I don't want to look like a masochistic architect, but I would say that to leave it on a positive note, that with a bit of distance, probably the toughest projects were the ones that led to I would say probably the most interesting experience as far as I'm concerned, and also to a lot of pleasure. So architecture is an extremely difficult discipline and an extremely difficult enterprise, and we should learn to enjoy its ups and downs. There's no such a thing as a simple project. If it's simple, it usually, if there's no blood, sweat, and tears, I don't think it leads to anything beyond what we already know.
Thank you very much. Piotr, anything about inspiration?
Well, I totally agree with what Eric said, that everyday life is inspiring you, and I find inspiration in every book I read, in the movies I watch, and so on, in the lightscape I'm visiting. That's a crucial for us for the sensibility we have. But I would like to pass to the other part of the question, is regarding the hard experiences we are having as architects. And my personal, say, experience and point of view is, and my personal problem is that I cannot support the sales departments of the clients. I mean, those who know better what is nice and what is pleasable and what is appropriate. And I dislike the clients who tell us what to do to have the nicer building. I mean, I can imagine, I really accept the fact that somebody is short of money, or I don't know, or a neighbor wants the building to be lower because of the light. But I'm really in trouble when it comes to the discussion on beauty with somebody who is not educated on beauty as we as architects are, because we studied all the rules of classical architecture, all these doctrines and composition rules, and then one day it comes the salesman and sells you and says the building should be blue because we like the blue, or something like this. And that's horrible. That's for me, that's the worst experience I can imagine.
It's very funny. I built in quite a lot of countries. I built quite a lot of buildings, and I have never ever discussed my architecture with anyone. There's never a client who asked me questions, never an authority. I've never ever had anyone to explain why a building is the way it is, other than if it's expensive or practical, but the architecture, I think that's the easiest part of our job.
Lucky you, lucky you. I envy you.
Well, it seems that there is not only one way to do architecture, and this is
that's exactly the reason why it's also useless to discuss it. I mean, that's why literally architectural discourses are not really interesting, to discuss the shape, left or right, blue or green, wobbly or straight, aggressive or soft.
You know, there is a very bad way that people think that de gustibus non est disputandum. So they say, okay, you think this and we think another way, and why your opinion is better than ours. And I really I think this is a pity. Well, at least in Poland, architects has no such respect as in your current work. I think so.
Well, thank you. I just have, let's say, a question to everybody and to myself, which doesn't request answer at this point because we are out of time, but maybe we have to take something with us to meditate at. I'm wondering if, do we need to teach architecture in the future as we did in the past? Because we received the definition of architecture in architectural schools, that architecture is at the top quality, the excellence of built environment. It's the art of construction. And we listen here a lot of opinions related to everything, to the most, to small parts, to every corner or where life is, or where we hit civilization, like in the pictures of Laurian, for example. Maybe we have to change the way we define architecture, or maybe we just have to find ways for architects to step out of architecture and do what's needed. So at this point, I'm looking at the clock. It was, I would say, if I would be, but I'm not an Englishman, it was not bad at all, but I would say it was really excellent. And I would like to thank you very much. Firstly, to the three invited speakers. It was a fantastic involvement of you with presentations and with the debate. Thank you to Laurian and to other guests we had live here. I have to apologize, Alex, which in his capacity of president of the Order of Architects was involved suddenly in a discussion at the governmental level, because things are happening these days and in this crisis. So thank you very much to everybody else. I'm very sorry that we do not hear applauses as we normally hear in a meeting room or in a in a live meeting. But please let us imagine ourselves that everybody is actually satisfied and offering thanks and applauses to the speakers. I'm still receiving questions, but I'm sorry, it's a little bit too late for them. So please allow me to end my mission here and to thank a lot also to the people which are not on the screen, the people from Pro Event, the staff of Florin, and I know those guys. They work a lot to make this possible. I think it was quite an interesting and positive event, even if we have to stay negative these days, but not to events and to debates, but to the virus. Thank you very much. Again, everybody, Florin, I'm offering you the final shot.
Thank you very much, all of you. And I hope to see you healthy in Bucharest in 16th of July to share Bucharest in Radisson Blu. Thank you very much again.